Okay, good evening, everyone. I can see people starting to join us. Thank you for joining us. We'll just wait for a few seconds, as I know there is a bit of a delay on StreamYard and some people still joining us. But thank you for joining us for our first virtual step event of the year. And I'll start in about just under 30 seconds. Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first Step Up Network virtual event of the academic year. My name is Ben Hobbs. I'm the founder and chair of the Step Up Network, and tonight's virtual event is all about leadership development. And I'll tell you a little bit more about tonight's event shortly. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about Step Up, who we are and what we do. As we know, some of you may have been Step Up veterans, if you like, and been to lots of different events. And some of you, this will be your first experience of us. And regardless of who you are, welcome. And we're really pleased you are joining us. But to connect with us tonight, please do use our social media handles. You can see there our social media handle for X or Twitter. Then we've got Blue Sky. And then on LinkedIn, we are Step Up Network, if you search us. And just so that we can pull everyone's thoughts together, if you use the hashtags, hashtag leadership development, hashtag step up shares, that will mean we can keep everyone's thoughts and views together. And it's a great way of catching everyone's key takeaways from the night. But first of all, who we are and what do we do? So we are a grassroots network that has turned into a community interest company and social enterprise. With the key focus on supporting educators to make the step up that they wish to make. So we mainly focus on leaders and people developing as leaders, but we recognise that not everyone in education sets out to be or wants to be a leader. So I think tonight's webinar will be really interesting to explore those different opportunities for development that you have as an educator. Our mission and values. So we're here to empower our diverse community with empathy, passion, and integrity, and ensure that everyone can make the step up that they wish to make, not the one that your boss wants you to make or your trust wants you to make. It's the one that you want to make. And that's what we're all about here at Step Up. And then in terms of our vision and our priorities, and this is very much what we want to give to the sector or see from the sector. So we believe that educational leadership should be diverse, inclusive, and flexible, should respond to the needs of the sector. And we really believe that there is a talent pipeline within the sector, but it needs developing and supporting. And then addressing the gaps in leadership knowledge. I know myself and Vicki, who's our host tonight, we've spoken about this before, about, you know, you're trained to be a teacher. If you are a teacher in education, some of you might be joining this, you might be a support staff member, but ultimately we're trained as teachers. We're not necessarily trained as leaders, but then we're expected to lead often from a very early stage in our career. And that's why we're here. We also believe in sharing our why. So that's sort of who we are, but why are we here? And we're born out of many different leaders' experience of leadership in education. And there are some experiences listed on the board. You might have experienced one of those. You might have experienced all of those. But ultimately, educational leadership should be accessible, flexible, inclusive, and should not impact negatively on your well-being. So how do we do this? And we do this through our 5 ways of working. So how do we support and empower our community? Networking, connecting, supporting, collaborating, and sharing are our key ways of doing this, whether that be connecting through our events, supporting you through our online resources on our website, like our directory or our library. We collaborate with other organisations as well, because whilst we're a leadership organisation, leadership network, we work with Women Ed to support female leaders. We work with Black Men Teach to support Black male teachers. We work with male childcare and teaching jobs to support men in the early years. We work with EduPulse to promote sort of research and coaching as well. And we share lots through our website, through our blogs, our newsletters, our social media, which some of you may be joining us from today. And networking ultimately is everything we do, and it's at the heart of everything we do. And we recognise that in our day jobs, we don't necessarily always get the time to network. And that's why it's really important to provide as many opportunities as possible to network. And then our what. So we believe from all of the work we've done, we focus on 5 key areas. And these are the areas that we believe our community, from the feedback they've had, really want us to focus on. So you can see today the theme of the webinar is leadership development. And we also do have other webinars later in the year on diversity journeys and wellbeing as well. In terms of our offer, so some of you may know us because you might have come to a face-to-face event or a virtual event. So we've got many events that we'll talk about at the end of the webinar. Our social media is also a way that many people connect with us, whether that be X, whether that be LinkedIn, whether that be Blue Sky, and so on. Our website is very well developed. It also includes a blog, a directory, and a library. You might know us from one of our collaborations or through one of our collaborative partners. Coaching is something we are developing behind the scenes, and I think linking to this webinar on leadership development, that's a really exciting development we've got coming up to make coaching as accessible as possible. And quite a few of our panelists tonight are coaches or qualified coaches. Our community, which is ever growing, and also much more than that as well. As we said, one of our key ways of working is collaborating. You can see there's just some examples of some of the organisations that we collaborate with, and in some cases we partner with them really regularly. In other cases, it's more so that we amplify each other and share each other's work, and we recognise that we're not here to be, Step Up isn't here to be everything for everyone. There's all these other organisations out here that we can direct them to and act as a signpost towards. In terms of our impact so far, I would recommend going onto our website and checking our impact section. And we do have an impact report, which we've tried to keep as easy to read as possible. But just to give you some figures, and I know I recognise that the figures aren't the only impact we have. The impact we have are on people that have attended our events, people who've gone on to go and get promotions after having the encouragement to do so, people realising that they have a limited belief and hearing a fantastic speaker and then realising what their next step is. So there's so much impact that we've had, and we know that there will probably be much more that we have as well. And it's people like our volunteers and our volunteer speakers that really help us achieve this. We've also, which we didn't expect to do, have won or been nominated for several awards in our first year of operation. So the one on the left there, we were named in the top 100 of social enterprises in the UK in 2024. And the one on the top left, tomorrow after my busy school day, I'm getting trained down to London as me and Uta, one of our other volunteers, attend the Leadership Awards, in which we've been nominated for another award. And again, this couldn't have been achieved without our fantastic community of people that make up the Step Up community. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. If we think about tonight, and I will introduce her in a moment. We have Vicki Maguire, who's our host and panel facilitator. Vicki spoke at our Manchester event last year, and we thought it would be a really good opportunity to get some of our speakers and community members to actually act as hosts rather than always the Step Up team. We then have a great team of panelists who Vicki will actually introduce to you and give you a bit more of a flavour as who they are and what they do. So we're now in the introduction phase. We're then going to pass on to the panel discussion, which Vicki will facilitate. A lot of these questions have been generated by our team, but if you do have any questions you would like to ask, please pop them in the comment section and Vicki will endeavour to ask them. And then I'll come back on at the very end and give you a bit of a flavour as how else you can link with us and connect with us and some of the other opportunities we have within the network. But if we think about leadership development, the reason why this is one of the themes that we've picked out is the things on the screen, that it should focus on knowledge and skills, the soft and hard, that are required by leaders. If you often go to a lot of education training courses, they will focus on the knowledge to do the job, not necessarily how to do it. So not necessarily how to have a really challenging conversation or how do you write a strategic plan and then implement it. We are often, and because of that, we're often given roles without our development. Coaching and a culture around coaching makes a huge difference from the beginning of a person's career, not just mentoring, but coaching as well. Not everyone needs to be a leader or wants to be a leader, but will still require some form of development. And development and improvement are two different things. Often, though, people don't know how to develop and sometimes do need that person to support them. And if you are someone who has responsibility for others, as a line manager in particular, although I don't really like the term line manager, but ultimately you should be seen as a leader of talent, and how are you nurturing that talent and developing that talent further. So I'm absolutely delighted that we're going to be able to have this panel discussion tonight, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen now so that I can introduce to you Vicki Maguire. Vicki, good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Ben. It's an absolute privilege to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to do this. I'm really, really excited about it.
Good. Well, I'm excited to see what all of our panelists have to say as well. If you don't know Vicki, Vicki is the founder of We Lead Well, which does a number of different things. You'll probably know it because of the podcast and listen to many of the podcast episodes. But Vicki also provides much coaching, training and consultant opportunities in the education sector and beyond. She is a former English teacher and senior leader for over 20 years in schools and led on a various range of different aspects of school life in the Northwest. And like I said, she was also a speaker at our Manchester event, which we held in April 2024. And Vicki shared a presentation on curious conversations, which was how to get curious through having a courageous conversation through Get Curious, and recommended Radical Candor as one of their books. And I read that and could not put it down in the summer. And it was a fantastic talk, Vicki. So thank you for sharing your wisdom there. And I'm really pleased that you'll be able to share that with our panelists tonight as well. So what I'm going to do, Vicki, I'm going to pop off and then I'm going to hand over to you to introduce our speakers, and then we will get started with the discussion.
Brilliant, Ben. Thank you. And Radical Candor is a book that I recommend to virtually everyone that I work with. So if you're making notes tonight, make a note of that. It's by Kim Scott. It will change the way you lead. It will change the way you communicate with people and engage with your teams. It's absolutely fantastic. But coming back to this evening, I'm really looking forward to the knowledge and experience that will be shared by this panel this evening, who bring their experience and their advice from diverse backgrounds and contexts, and who between them have many years of experience. And I do want to say thanks to Ben for putting together such a great panel, because I'm really excited about what they've got to share with us. So let's have some introductions. First of all, we've got Emily Folorunsho, and Emily is an author. I have big respect for anybody who's an author, Emily. I think that's fantastic. She's a teacher and a speaker. She's been a head of history in an inner city school that's 12 form entry. And I wrote in brackets in my notes, yes, 12 exclamation mark, because that is just, it's mind-boggling, really. So that's amazing that she's done that. She is a lead practitioner, an SLE and a governor. So welcome to Emily. I'm sure she's got lots of insight to share with us tonight. Next, we've got Joe Armson. And Joe is an assistant head teacher. And he believes in, I really loved it when I read this about Joe, because I believe this as well, that building strong teams is at the centre of what we need to do in leadership. And Joe is a solutions-focused leader, which I also love. I think you're probably going to be telling us more about that as well. And he's led on a number of school development areas. He is also a governor and a borough writing moderator, and a director trustee of a local secondary school. How do you have time to do anything else, Joe? Just absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm in awe of the amazing things that you're doing there in education. Then we've got Steph Carlin, and in her current role as a transformative coach, Steph draws on her extensive background in teacher development. She's worked with teachers from ITT to ECT support, and with teachers in her role as a head of humanities. She supports education leaders using her expertise in what's known as functional fluency. And when Steph told me about this because I know Steph. When she told me about this, I was just absolutely blown away by it. I think it's something that is really good. I'm hoping that she's going to tell you something about that this evening. So we have to make sure we give Steph an opportunity to share that with us. And transactional analysis, which is another area that can be absolutely transformational for people. And she helps schools with those to become more effective communicators. And there's a theme developing here because Steph is also a governor. Maybe I need to sign up as a school governor. I'm getting a sense that that's the thing to do. And Steph is particularly committed to developing leaders from diverse and representative backgrounds. And last but not least, we've got the brilliant Helen Verroux. And I also know Helen. I've been on Helen's podcast, and that was an amazing experience for me. Helen is also known as Coach Helen. She's an educational consultant, leadership coach, another author. So I bow down to you as another author, Helen, of The Success Guide for Teens. And she is the founder of the Attendance Boost Blueprint workshop and program to boost school attendance with simple strategies that provide a holistic whole school approach to engagement. And I think that's really, really needed at the moment because we are in a bit of a crisis in terms of attendance in schools. So there might be something that Helen can contribute today in that area. So let's get started. And as the title of the webinar is leadership development, I thought we would begin by asking the question, what does leadership development mean to you? And I'm going to throw this out to Joe and let you start off the evening, Joe, by telling us what does leadership development mean to you?
Evening, everyone, and thank you, Vicki, for a lovely introduction. I think in terms of leadership development, it's many things, so it's hard to define in one element. But I think when I was thinking about this question, it really comes down to building capacity. I think building capacity in yourself to be able to understand kind of what leadership means, because it's an ongoing learning process. I don't think anyone can define exactly what leadership is because it's constantly learning. It's constantly thinking about what do the people that you lead need from you, but also what do you need from yourself, and then what does the organisation need that you're leading within. But I think if I can kind of summarise it as building capacity, because the stronger you get as a leader, the more you can take on, the more you can think strategically, the more you can think about what other people in your team need. The more you can think about solutions and see kind of the wood from the trees about when things get tough and when challenges arise, the stronger you can kind of respond to those things, because those challenges are inevitable and they'll come up. But I think as a leader, your constant learning and self-reflection is how you then develop to become the leader you want to be. And then you start to think about, okay, so I've learned this, and then this is what I can then take forward to the next step. And you build capacity and capacity and capacity to then think about, well, I can take this on now, I can take this on now, I can start to develop this area. This is the part of the team I know is strong, this is the part of the team I need to develop. And then you can kind of start to reflect on what you need to do to help others more. So yeah, I would say, to summarize, I would say building capacity and thinking about what you can do. But the stronger you get, the more things you have capacity to do, and the easier you can reflect and develop strength as well.
You're muted.
You're muted, Vicki.
Do you know what? I knew I was going to do that. It was one of those things, I imagined it in my head, I pictured it, and then it actually happened. I actually predicted it myself. What I was saying was, I think it's a really interesting way of looking at that, because we talk about building capacity and we think about building capacity within a school, but you're talking about how it's building capacity within yourself. And I think that's a really great way to describe it. It's thinking about how you build your capacity to be an effective leader. And I really do like that. I think that's a really good way of describing it. Would anybody like to add anything? Steph, Helen, Emily,
Yeah.
Go on. Helen. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel that really developing leaders is about transformation. I feel like sometimes we tend to forget that aspect of leadership, and people tend to focus more on the title. And for me, developing leadership is more about unleashing your dormant qualities and really discovering different side of yourself, you were saying that. And it's a process. It's a process that we must be willing to learn daily and to develop our gifts. And if we don't have that aspect of understanding transformation, change, then it is hard for some people to really capture the concept. And I believe as well that when we talk about developing leaders, is really as well developing the heart of the person, not just having a job title, but really having a heart posture to the things that you are actually offering as a leader.
Yeah, I think I really love that, the idea that it's about transforming yourself. When you become a leader, you transform yourself. And I think you mentioned there as well, Joe, about strengths, but it's also about those areas for development. Because when you move into a new role, there'll be things that you've not done. And your strengths are often the things that you enjoy doing, the things that you do often, and they become your strengths. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They become your strengths because they're the things you like to do, or the things that you're doing regularly. You just get better at them. And sometimes those dormant things, the things within you that you might have the potential to do, you've just not had an opportunity to use those skills or those qualities. And when you take on a new role, it's about identifying those areas, isn't it, that you want to develop. And we will come to that in a bit, that the sort of developing those areas. But you will find that in new roles, there are different things to do and new skills to learn, and that you do have to transform yourself. Steph, do you want to add anything before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I think I feel really aligned with what has already been said, but I think just that emphasis that one of the things that sometimes happens in school is that sort of focus on the, you need to develop here, where is your area to develop. And actually, as a coach, I work with so many leaders that don't actually recognize where their strengths are. And the nature of education, we do so many things all day, every day, and we don't recognize that we're able to do that because of this humongous skill set that we've already built. So actually taking that time to recognize that if you're a classroom teacher, you are already a leader. You are leading 30 young people all day, every day. And actually, there's sometimes not a huge amount of difference between leading young people and leading adults. So you are absolutely building skills all the time. So yeah, really, really echo what's been said, but especially that of Helen, that if you're developing as a leader, you're developing as a person, and that's really key to this for me.
And I think you're absolutely right there, that lots of people working in schools really struggle to identify their strengths. When you say, well, what are your strengths? And when I do the Women Leaders Group coaching program, for example, we do a session on strengths, and it's a real challenge. The women really struggle to say, I'm good at this, I'm good at that. And I think one of the things that sometimes is missed on leadership development programs is working on your strengths as well as your areas for development. It's not just about developing your weaknesses, it's about improving your strengths, because you can keep improving those. So thanks for those responses. I think they were really insightful. The next question I've got is about why you think it's important to develop as a leader. So, once you're a leader, or, you're in a leadership position, or like you said, Steph, we're all leaders anyway. Why do you think it's important to develop as a leader? Emily, do you want to come into the discussion here and answer that question?
Yeah, so I first of all kind of want to state as well that you won't be fully ready. I think most of it in leadership is learning on the job. So I think if somebody has a heart for leadership and is invested in literally stepping up, then as long as you're willing to learn, then do it. But in the interim, it is still important to prepare, because it's important to have those strong mental models, so that you have something to lean upon when you might be hit with crisis management, or when, for example, you need to solve an issue. And having strong leadership and having those kind of techniques under your belt will really help in terms of your own well-being, but also others' well-being. I know of people that have worked under not well-organized leaders or not the best leaders, and it's really impacted their well-being and their workload. So it's important so in essence, it's important to develop as a leader, to ensure strong well-being for those that you will eventually lead, and also for the success of what you're leading, as well as your own well-being. But also with that same kind of stint that I know of head teachers that have said that the MPQH was great, but it didn't really necessarily fully prepare them until they were in the job.
Yes. And I think you make a really good point there, that no one is ready for leadership. If you are waiting to apply for jobs and thinking, no, I need to be really ready for this, I need to know that I can 100% do it, you probably never end up applying for anything. You need to recognize that when you're applying for a role as a head of department, you are not a head of department yet. So you can't do that at that moment in time. When you start doing it, you learn how to do it. So when I became a deputy head, in the first day in the job, I was absolutely quaking in my boots. I was just thinking, I don't know, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. And the head of science came to ask me something, and he said, oh, now we need this in the science department, can we have it? And I was thinking, I don't know, why are you coming to ask me? And I was just like, felt so out of my depth. But like you're saying, leadership development is important, because the more you do it, the more you develop the mental models for it, the more you develop your toolkit of techniques. And that's the way that you get better in the role. That's the way that you develop your confidence to know that if something happens, I have done this development work and I will be ready to deal with it. It's about resilience as well, isn't it? It's about, developing your resilience as a leader and making sure that you've got all those tools in your toolkit, so that when something happens that's going to come and maybe test you, that you're ready for that test. Yeah. Would anybody else like to? Joe, do you want to?
Yeah, I think it's definitely resonating with me what you're saying about continuous development, because I think if you see leadership as a continuous development, then it actually helps you with understanding the importance of developing. Because if you see it as leadership as a process rather than like an end goal, like I'm going to be this leader and I'm going to be this great leader, and this is where I want to get to, and then when I'm there it's all going to be fine, then you'll always feel like a failure. Whereas if you see it as a continuous process, that actually leadership and what you're doing, whether you're assistant head, deputy head at all stages, or whatever level of leadership you're at all stages, you are going to have to develop. You're going to have to adapt with the times. There's different challenges every year there's a new challenge. Every year there's a new theme in education. Every year you're leading new people, and every single person is different that you lead. So I think if you approach it with the kind of idea that you're always going to have to develop, there will always be challenges, but you start to see challenge as a good opportunity for learning. Obviously, you're thinking about the challenge as a learning opportunity, just like you speak to the children that you're teaching about, like, this is the learning opportunity, what can I learn from this? Obviously, you might need that night to vent and recover from that event. But the next day, if you can take that chance to speak to someone or self-reflect on what happened and then how you can learn from it and take that learning forward, so you treat it as a positive for like your development into becoming that leader you want to be. Because that's definitely helped me in terms of reframing those challenging moments when you just think, I don't know what I'm doing. You can then think, okay, no, these bits are going well, but these are the bits I need to develop, and that helps you to reflect, I think, and then continuously, build resilience, I think, when it gets hard.
Yeah, it's important to recognise that you're not the finished article. My ex-father-in-law had this thing where he said, I'm the finished article, I'm the finished article. And I would always think, surely not, like, surely there's always room for development. But it's true, if you become a head of department, then you might want to move on to become an assistant head, or then up to deputy or head. It's a career, and you need to progress through your career. So you're thinking about the next step often. And I think what you're saying there, Joe, is about the importance of always learning, that you are always learning in the roles that you do. And it's really important to recognize as well that you are a role model for learning as well. When you're a leader in a school, especially in education, you are the role model of continuous learning, aren't you? That you value learning as a process and something that can improve you and develop you both as a person and as a leader. So it's really important to recognize that it's a lifelong process. You just have to keep learning, and the importance of reflection as well. I think what you say there is particularly important, that you take the time when you are learning to be a leader to reflect on how you are leading and your leadership. So some really, really useful points there. Helen, do you want to add?
I just wanted to say that in education, we tend to focus more on the performance, and we really tend to focus to lift up the person. And I feel this is something that has to be put into refocus. We need to really realign our mindset on self-discovery. As you said, it's about learning, but it's about as well learning yourself. And as you were saying, a lot of people don't know their strengths, don't know who they are, and we can see it with parents, we can see it with teachers, we can see it with like across the community. But now is really refocusing the vision on the person and really finding who people are really. And it's not like, and to answer the question, why is it important to develop as a leader? I feel like it is not just about influencing, but it's about impacting as well and making people realize their own worth. I feel that we tend to forget that part. Impact is important. Transformation is important. We are dealing with human beings. It's all the school is all the time about performance, and it's hard sometimes to really separate both parts. But we have to really see the human side in education. We need to see the impact, the influence that we have on people. And for me, that's leadership. Leadership is about that heart and that posture and that help, and impact that we have on people on a daily basis.
And I you can see me nodding away there, because I am totally in agreement with you about we are humans first. It is about the heart. And Steph will know this because she and I are both consultants for the Resilient Leaders Elements leadership programs. And they have a holistic approach to leadership that not only looks at what you do, which is, it's a big element of your role as a leader, the things that you do, your clarity of direction, your strategic intent, the decisions that you're making, but who you are is also important. And you need to get a balance between the two, because who you are, your values, your morals, how you build that leadership presence from being intentional and being authentic and recognizing that you're in service to the people who you work with, and having a really well developed awareness of yourself, the people around you and your environment. Those things come from within you. And that is really important. You've got to think about developing what's on the inside, as well as developing what you're dealing with on the outside. It's a holistic approach, and you've got to get balance between the two. So I think that really resonates very powerfully with me, Helen. It's a heart thing. We're dealing with people, and you've got to learn. A big part of leadership development, I think, is learning how to get to know yourself better and learn how to build relationships with other people. So thank you for your contributions there. So this leads really nicely into the next question, because, and I'm on a retreat at the moment. I'm on a resilience retreat, and we've been doing some work while I've been on this retreat on values, and they are particularly important to help us to lead authentically and to lead intentionally. And I would love to know what your values are and how developing as a leader aligns with your values. And I'm not going to put you on the spot, so I'm going to tell you what my values are, because I think it's important, if I'm asking you, that I need to be able to say what my values are. So my values are, first of all, some people say this is 2, but I say it's 1 because they go together: kindness and compassion. The next one is growth, because I think, I'm here. We'll talk about leadership development, but growth is so important to me personally and professionally. We've got to be continually growing and developing. And my third one is connection. And again, you can see I'm here. We're helping to build this network. Connection for me is the key to everything that we do. So is there someone who would like to start by sharing their values and just talking about how developing as a leader aligns with your values? Who would like to?
I'm happy
Emily.
to go. Emily?
Okay. Emily, you go. That's okay.
I'll just talk about two. One for me, I know it's kind of cliche, but integrity really matters. So if I expect, others to do something within the team, I will lead the way and, be an example of how it should be done in terms of excellence and literally, you practice what you preach, essentially. So that's like my motto, and being really ethical as well, in order for everybody in my department to feel safe and have that sense of belonging, because that's the foundation of, for example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's what makes powerful teams. And another big one of mine is lifelong learning. I love CPD. I love improvement. I love growth. And I make it known to my, team that I'm not a ready kind of made leader. But what I do is I seek to improve. I seek to learn, and I expect them to follow suit as well. So I think that's important. I want them to be the best in terms of their teaching practice, and I try to replicate the same in terms of my teaching practice, as well as in terms of my leadership capacity as well. So those are my two major values, because what I do want to do is I want to be more of an instructional leader, whereby learning is at the heart and drives everything. And I feel like lifelong learning as well as integrity are fundamental to being an instructional leader as well as a transformational leader.
Yeah, and we just had a comment there. I don't know if you heard someone was agreeing with you and saying that yes, integrity does matter. You have to do what you say you're going to do, don't you, as a leader? And you will learn to develop that when you do your reflection and you think about your leadership and your development as a leader. These will be things that you consider and reflect on. Steph, you were going to go next. Well, do you want to go next because you were eager to share yours?
Yeah, I'm eager. About it actually. I definitely have that integrity and authenticity. I'm kind of cheating like Vicki, and I've got two together, but to me they are incredibly aligned. And probably also linked to my second one, which is being present. And I don't mean that in the literal sense of don't have a sick day, I've got to be there. I mean, how am I present? How am I in that here and now moment? How am I making sure that I'm not taking the difficult lesson that I've just had here into my next conversation with somebody? So really being connected to that moment. Linking again to Emily, I say it as, where's my clarity, boundary and structure? So have I given my message in a way where people know what is expected of them? Because I think if I'm uncertain and giving uncertainty, it doesn't give somebody else a chance to operate to their best performance or intention from what I've set. And one that I've learnt more recently or later in life is that I have to look at how my decision, so my value, affects me as well as others, because so I operate in this links to functional fluency. It really helps me redefine my values. So how am I benefiting in this situation as well as others? Because that pattern of we give, and then we run out of energy or we make ourselves ill, and actually putting yourself at the heart of a decision, or at least equal in a decision, is an important part of having sustainable leadership in schools. And then my last one, so I do have 5, a bit more than everyone else, is about diversity, and that is how am I promoting diversity of thought as well as protected characteristics, and really challenging that idea that, you know, leaders think a certain way or leaders behave a certain way. Actually, a diverse team in all elements of diversity, and me empowering that, is how we get really functional and supported environments. So they're my values. And my last point is that I didn't learn until later in my career how important knowing your values is, because actually in education, how do I know I'm working in the right school? How do I know I'm in a leadership team where I'm going to function well? So if you are listening to us and thinking, I don't know my values, I would really, really encourage you to do that work, because it really helps inform, you know, your next steps, and make sure you work somewhere that you're aligned.
Yeah, and as I was saying before about that, the development of leadership presence and being intentional in what you do, and making sure that others understand your intention and will come along with it. That comes initially from your values, and that's why it's so important to know what they are. Just to come back to one thing that you said there, Steph, that I felt was really important to just reiterate, is the being present. And I think that is so important, and that comes down to self-awareness, and it comes down to being aware of, as a leader, your emotions are very important, and you have to be really aware of how you are feeling. So like you said, you've just come out of an awful lesson where the behavior's been terrible, and you have to go and have a conversation with a member of staff about something important. You have to be able to ground yourself in between those two, so that you don't bring one into the other. And that does come down to like really strong awareness of self, and being able to recognize when you're going from pressure to stress, or if you are feeling stressed, what you need to do to bring yourself back. Because I think in schools a lot of the time we do end up in hyper arousal, fight or flight mode, and we need to be able to recognize when that's happening to us and bring us back down. And part of leadership development, again, is learning about yourself. The functional fluency that you've talked about, Steph, is part of that bigger piece of learning about yourself, isn't it? And that's a Helen, like you're saying, the heart is so important. It's a massive piece of leadership development, and that is all wrapped up in the values work that you will do, you know, as you are developing your leadership. Joe, do you want to share your values? And
I think linking to that as well about being present, I try and it's a big thing I've learned, I think, in terms of whatever's going on, the million things you've got to do on your to-do list. If you're giving someone the time to listen to them, be present in that moment, because that is the biggest gift you can actually give, is someone, you know, giving someone your time, and they will appreciate it so much if you sit there even for 5 minutes and just listen, and then you can talk it out, and then you don't have to necessarily do anything with that information, but within that 5-10 minutes where you just check in, have a chat, say, I get it, I understand, being present in that moment, I think is really important. But yeah, kind of links to like some of the values. I find values really hard, because there's like, I look at the list of values that are important for a leader, and you could actually attribute all of them to yourself. So it's trying to kind of order them in terms of what's important. But I think something that's potentially quite undervalued in education is appreciation, because if you can recognize the good that people are doing, it then makes those conversations where you have to challenge something, or you have to have those difficult conversations much more. You've got a bank to work with if you're also appreciating the things that people you're leading are doing really well, things that are going really well for other people. Because if you appreciate other people and appreciate the efforts that people are putting in, then it can help with those more difficult conversations about things that aren't going so well at the time. But I think another one alongside that is courage to have those conversations as well. So when things aren't going so well, like, you know, Radical Candor is, I've second you on that, because it is a fantastic book, because it helps you to understand the fact that it's important to challenge things directly, but also to be compassionate and support and care personally about that person. But having courage to have those conversations can then help other people to develop in really important ways. And the last one that I kind of have as my top ones is trustworthiness. I'm big believer in that trust bank of those trust circles that you build, even small things every day. Like if you say you're going to do something, do it, and then don't overpromise. If you say it's going to, like, I'm really up against it at the moment, it might take me a week. Don't say a week if it's going to take you a month, or I'll get it to you by the end of the day. Don't say by the end of the day if it's going to take you a week. Just think really carefully about promising. And I think as a senior leader, you start to realize that you've said stuff and then people take it really seriously because you said it, and then you realize, oh gosh, it's going to take me longer, and then people feel let down. So I think trustworthiness and saying something that you're going to come back to and always close that circle off is important.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And Helen?
For me, it's well, to add to everything you said, I like compassion, integrity, responsibility. For me, the two main values that I want to add to what you said is seek first to understand before being understood. That's something that I tend to do a lot with people I'm connecting with, is really trying to understand what they're saying first. And then from their perspective, I can make actually a decision, because I feel most of the time when we talk, when we listen to people, we tend to listen to answer, but not to listen to really have empathy on what they're actually feeling at the moment. So that's something I'm working on. And as well, I believe in servanthood. For me, service is 100%. When you are wherever you are in the leadership position that you are in, you need to focus on seeing people and really just adding value to their life. I feel that sometimes we tend to forget that part where we are quite selfish. We focus on us, but we don't really focus on adding value to people. So everywhere that I go, I always tend to focus on, okay, even if it's a small thing, how I can add value to your life. And I feel this is a big component of leadership. Leadership is about service for me. And the last one is passion. When I do something, it wholeheartedly is 100%. So I feel passion is something that matters to me in terms of sharing my views, my values, is just doing it wholeheartedly. So that's all I want to add.
Yeah. And I think it comes a little bit back to what Joe was saying about capacity and building capacity, because as a leader, we're trying to build capacity, and we have to recognize that we're in service to other people to help build their capacity as well. So I think one of the reasons that leadership development is so important is so that when you are a leader, you understand how you developed and the learning process, so that you can support other people to develop as well. Because as a servant leader, recognizing that you are in service to other people is understanding what development they need. And you have to have had and engaged in that sort of development too, to understand it and be aware of how development happens, so that you can support other people. So that's really, really important, Helen. I absolutely agree with you there. So coming back to what we were talking about before in terms of areas for development, we did say, obviously, don't ignore your strengths, work on your strengths, but there will be always areas for development that you can focus on. So how can leaders or teachers identify their areas for development? And I'm going to come to Joe first on this question.
I think the biggest things for me, first thing I would always say is brilliant is coaching. Even if it's not an official coaching session where you do it every week, you do it with a qualified coach or whatever, trying to seek out opportunities for someone to ask you questions so you can self-reflect is the biggest learn I've had. I've actually met Ben, as founder of Step Up Network. I met him through doing group coaching together, and we've developed together doing that. I've also done one-to-one coaching, but also I try and seek out opportunities to have conversations with other professionals at school as much as possible, to really think about what I've done and how I can self-reflect. And I think the other thing I'd mention alongside coaching and constantly self-reflecting on decisions and actions, like I said before, though, not necessarily on the day, maybe the day after, is the last thing I'd say is seeking feedback as much as possible. Seeking feedback, make sure you're in the right space for it, and also make sure that you're feeling resilient at that time. Like maybe don't ask for feedback in the week before Christmas or the last week of term, but maybe when you're feeling like you're in a good place in your position and you feel resilient enough, seek that feedback from the people you lead, because they will be kind in what they give you, and also will be constructive because they're often your blind spots about things you can't see that you're doing, and they can feed back to you, and it helps. It's really, really helpful development. So yeah, I'd say coaching, self-reflecting, and seeking feedback would be my 3 bits of advice there.
Yeah, definitely, because coaching gives you the space in which you've got the time for that reflection, because a lot of the time we're just rushing from one thing to the next, and we don't ever really get a chance to think about anything that we're doing particularly. Whereas when you take the time to have a coaching conversation, like you say, it doesn't matter who it's with, you will get that time to reflect on those areas. But like you say as well, you'll have blind spots. So asking other people, asking people to give you feedback, people who work with you, colleagues, people who might, as Ben said, I don't like the term line management, but people who line manage you, family and friends can give you a lot of good feedback as well. They know you just as well as anybody else, if not better. So they can give you some good feedback as well. I think they're 2 really good areas. Steph, have you got anything to add on this question?
Yeah, I think there are loads of sort of different tools that schools and individuals can invest in, and on the whole, I think people doing some kind of psychometric test and things like that, they do have insight and can offer. The one thing that I would always say is be careful of the ones that say you're this type of person, because although that can be insightful for a while, that could also actually start to give you limiting beliefs about what I am capable of and how I lead. So we've already mentioned the RLDP. I really love that. It gives 360-degree feedback, but it also, and what makes it different and why I really sort of love it is because it not only identifies those development areas, but it actually has a sort of built-in system to give you activities to do to work on those areas. And for me, that was totally different to anything else that I'd done, the many opportunities I had, because not only did it highlight where I could work, but it also told me what to do. And it describes itself, Joe, as a coach in your pocket. And it's it links that thing that, although I would always recommend getting a coach, actually sometimes it's not feasible or it's not possible, but this kind of thing that gives you those activities in which to reflect. But yeah, if it's building your self-awareness, if it's giving you strategies on how to improve, and it's a really good thing to invest in terms of development. And the last thing I would say, I again echo Joe with get feedback, but get feedback from a leader that is also still working on themselves, because otherwise you get all sorts of their opinions and biases of what they think a leader should be. So if they're not a leader you admire, don't take their feedback. Controversial opinion.
Really great advice there. And I think I agree with what you're saying. There are lots of different tests that you can do online. What sort of leader are you? There are personality tests that tell you what sort of person you are. There are lots of things that might say you're red, green, blue, yellow, all of those sorts of things. But you need to take some of those things with a pinch of salt so that people aren't labeled, because it's very easy to label yourself as whatever it might be. And you need to try and avoid that. The functional fluency is a way of, it's not labeling, is it? But it gives you the insight and the benefit of understanding yourself better.
Yeah, it just tells you, here's where your effective energy is going. Here's your behaviours that make a huge impact on people. Here's where you could be more effective. Here's how you could communicate differently. And my favourite thing about that is that I literally dissect every interaction I have and can understand so much more classroom, leadership, everything just through that model. So Emily mentioned tools earlier that really help you, and that would literally change my life.
Thank you so much. I think we've run out of time. I cannot believe that the discussion has gone so quickly, because I did have some more questions. But I think that's been so insightful. There's so much there for people to take away. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for being so bringing your experience, being so honest and sharing lots of really useful ideas and insights into leadership development. So I'm hoping that Ben is going to join us back. Here he is.
By magic.
I can't tell you how impressed I am with myself that I've actually finished something on time, Ben, because it's unprecedented for me.
I know, and like you said, I think we could have probably spent a whole day on this topic between the five of you discussing it, and actually some really key threads and themes there. So we will make sure we'll get this edited down and pick out those key threads and share them with the people that watch live, but also people who didn't watch live who might find it useful. But yeah, if I can just reiterate Vicki's thanks to our panelists, but also to Vicki as well for facilitating a discussion, because I know it's not facilitating a discussion amongst a group of people isn't always the easiest things compared to presenting on your one, if you like. But so many great threads and thoughts there. So thank you so much, everybody. So I'm just going to take all of our panelists off screen just whilst I do a last bit of housekeeping towards the end, before the end of this webinar. So just going to get my slides back on. So, like I said, I know there was lots of key things people took away from the event. So please do use the hashtag StepUpShares and share your key takeaways from today's event. If you go onto our Twitter account, our X account, whatever you wish to call it, Twitter still for me, then our fantastic volunteers for social media have posted lots of the key threads and thoughts for tonight's event. So please do go and check that out. So in terms of where next, there's lots of things. Feel free to send us your feedback. This is the first time we've actually done a virtual event as a panel discussion. We haven't done that before. We've always done it with people making presentations or speaking. So this is the first time for us. So I'd love to know your thoughts and feedback on what you thought worked really well, if there's anything we could do better and things like that. Do also link with us on all the other areas there. Follow the Eventbrite page for future events. You could write a blog for us. We'd love to see more blogs and more people sharing their stories that way. So feel free to get in touch if you would like to share that with us. Check out the website and all of the other things on the website, which is constantly evolving. Amplify us on social media, subscribe on our newsletter, and more so, we'd love to see you at another face-to-face or virtual event. And coming soon in the theme of leadership development is we will be sharing our Step Up coaching offer. Ever since we launched, so we launched in June 2023, when we were deciding what we wanted to offer as a network from the November before, so November 2022, we asked what did people want from a leadership network or a leadership organisation. And coaching was something that came out on top, and not just necessarily offering coaching ourselves, but also looking at how we can link with coaches and coaching organisations and share and amplify them. So finally, one of our volunteers, Uta, who's been leading on this, has done a tremendous job, and we will shortly be sharing this offer with you. So please do keep your eyes peeled for what we have to come. In terms of our future events on the screen now, you can see a mixture of our face-to-face and our other virtual events. All of the events are on Eventbrite and on our website. If you go to the events section of our website and scroll down to the calendar, and the calendar has all the Eventbrite links on there as well. You can connect with us in many different ways, mainly on social media. Feel free to share everything you've learned with us. Feel free to send us an email, write us a blog, check out the website, and so on. And last but by no means least, thank you for joining us. Whether you're watching this live or watching it back afterwards, we will get it snipped down so you can see some of the more shorter segments of the panel discussion around those key questions that Vicki posed. A huge thank you to our panelists, Jo, Emily, Helen and Stephanie, for giving up their time to join us. And a huge thank you to Vicki, not only for just being a host for us, but for being a real champion of our network and supporting us. So a huge thank you. And as it's now that time, thank you for joining us. Have a lovely rest of your evening. I hope to see you at another event very soon. Thank you very much.